Imagine a country with cutting-edge AI, booming markets, and endless apps. But not enough teachers to keep classrooms staffed and not enough doctors to keep hospitals moving. This isn't a sci-fi future. It's already happening, quietly, across many high-income economies. Today, we're going to unpack why the most recession-proof jobs are becoming the hardest to fill, why immigration is no longer a stable fix, and what this means for growth, inequality, and everyday life. The shortage of essential workers isn't a temporary staffing problem. It's a slow, structural shift driven by demographics, incentives, and policy time lags. 1. Context. What essential worker shortages really mean. When people talk about job disruption, the spotlight is usually on what technology might automate. But the bigger near-term problem is simpler. We don't have enough humans in roles society can't function without, especially teachers, nurses, and doctors. To be clear, shortage doesn't mean every school is empty or every hospital is closed. It usually shows up as growing class sizes, unfilled vacancies and long-term substitutes, longer waiting times in clinics and emergency departments, burnout-driven turnover that keeps the system in permanent catch-up mode. And because these systems are large and slow, the early warning signs can be easy to ignore until the pressure becomes visible everywhere. 2. Evidence block A. The pipeline is shrinking while demand rises. Let's start with the numbers behind the story. Education. UNESCO has warned that maintaining and expanding education systems globally requires millions of additional teachers by 2030. The exact figure varies depending on definitions and regions, but the direction is consistent. Demand is rising faster than supply. Healthcare. The World Health Organization has also flagged a large global shortfall in health workers by 2030, driven by aging populations and retirement waves in many countries. Now, zoom in on high-income economies. Two forces collide. Retirement waves. Large cohorts of teachers and clinicians are nearing retirement age. Rising need. Aging societies require more healthcare, and education systems still need staffing even when birth rates fall. Because shortages are also shaped by attrition and workload, not just the number of students. You can think of it like a reservoir. Inflows equals new graduates entering the profession. Outflows equals retirements, plus early exits, plus career switching. When outflows rise and inflows stagnate, the water level drops, even if salaries look fine on paper. 3. Counterpoints, but teachers and doctors are well paid, right? Here's the pushback you'll hear immediately. Teachers have stable jobs. Doctors earn above average wages. So why would anyone avoid these careers? It's a fair question, because average wages alone don't capture the real trade-offs. Years of training, upfront costs and debt, work intensity and burnout, how pay compares to other careers with similar education and responsibility. And crucially, whether a profession is good depends less on the average salary and more on the lifetime value proposition, including workload, flexibility, and living costs in the places where the jobs actually are. 4. Evidence block B. The incentive math has changed. Let's break down the incentive problem in plain terms. Teaching. In many countries, teacher pay can reach or slightly exceed national averages over a full career. But for a lot of high-performing graduates, the comparison isn't teacher versus average worker. It's teacher versus other degree-intensive careers. And teaching has become harder in ways that don't show up in a salary table. More administrative tasks, higher classroom complexity, less autonomy, higher emotional load, rising housing costs in cities where demand is highest. Medicine. Medicine still offers high earning potential in many systems, but the path is long, the pressure is intense, and the burnout risk is real. In addition, some countries have rigid public sector pay structures or bottlenecks and training slots that limit how fast the workforce can expand. And there's a timing issue that politicians rarely talk about honestly. You can't spin up doctors quickly. From university entry to full qualification can take close to a decade, depending on the system and specialty. So today's shortage often reflects decisions made 10 to 20 years ago. How many training places were funded, how residency slots were structured, whether retention was prioritized, how much slack the system was allowed to have. 5. The migration lever, why it worked and why it's unstable. When domestic supply can't keep up, governments reach for the fastest tool available, migration. From a policy standpoint, it's attractive. Faster than training new cohorts, often cheaper than large public sector pay reform, politically easier than decade-long funding commitments. So countries design visas to fast-track nurses, doctors, and other essential workers. In the UK, for example, health and care visas have been a major channel for staffing relief in recent years. But migration has a built-in limitation. Migration doesn't create new workers globally. It reallocates them. If one country solves its shortage by pulling staff from another system, the global shortage doesn't shrink, it shifts. And there's a second underappreciated problem, retention. Migrants are often more mobile. Once they gain experience and credentials, they may move again to countries offering higher pay, better conditions, or easier long-term settlement. So the receiving country can become a stepping stone rather than a destination, especially when wage gaps are large. 6. What happens when shortages become permanent? Here's the most important part. Systems can appear functional while quietly degrading. Education. Shortages don't always cause dramatic collapse. They often cause slow drift. Larger classes, fewer specialized subjects, more inexperienced teachers, less time for individual support. The cost shows up later as weaker skill formation, and over time that can feed into lower productivity and slower growth. Healthcare. Healthcare impacts show up faster, longer waiting times, delayed diagnoses, staff stretched thin, higher preventable harm risk in overloaded systems. A less healthy population is a less productive one. More sick days. Lower labor force participation, higher long-term public costs. 7. Global spillovers, brain drain, and inequality. Zoom out, and the effects compound. When high-income countries recruit from lower-income systems, it can weaken the very institutions those countries need to build long-term capacity, especially in health. It's not just a moral issue, it's an economic loop. Weaker systems leads to worse outcomes, leads to harder to retain staff, leads to more emigration. Meanwhile, within rich countries, shortages can widen inequality. People who can afford private options opt out. Everyone else waits longer or receives less consistent service. In other words, essential worker shortages can quietly create a two-speed society. 8. What actually works? Policy choices that change the trajectory. This is the part most videos skip. Shortages aren't destiny. Countries that reduce the gap tend to do some combination of expand training capacity early and consistently. Not a one-off funding spike, but a sustained pipeline. Improve retention, not just recruitment. Reduce administrative load, stabilize schedules, invest in mentorship, keep workloads manageable, make the career financially viable in high-cost regions. Housing support, regional incentives, targeted pay structures. Use technology as a force multiplier, not a replacement. AI to reduce paperwork, triage routine tasks, improve scheduling. Protect the human core of the job, teaching, judgment, patient care. A key idea here is leverage. If you reduce non-core tasks even a little, you may retain more staff, and retention compounds over time. So the real danger isn't waking up one day without teachers and doctors. It's slowly accepting understaffing as normal, and then paying the price in weaker education, worse health outcomes, and slower growth. If you want to go deeper, the next logical question is, what happens to the economy when more sectors become constrained not by demand, but by the supply of skilled people? That's where the story of demographics, productivity, and technology really collide. This is not financial advice, just an evidence-based look at the forces shaping the economy. Thanks for watching.